everybody, and welcome to the Dissecting Fiction podcast. I'm Vinny Murphy.
And I'm Christiaan.
And today we're doing another unstable reactor from Dissecting Fiction. So for this one, I had to watch something, so I'll let Christiaan take it from here for a bit.
Yes, I picked My Hero Academia for Vinny to watch. Originally, I was planning to do this and One Punch Man because I think they parallel each other pretty nicely. But I had Vinny watch the first two episodes of My Hero Academia, which is kind of... I don't know how many of our fans out there listen to, or watch anime, rather. But My Hero Academia has kind of been one of the bigger animes in the past few years. Up there with like Attack on Titan. And it's all about superheroes. It's kind of like Japan's take on the Marvel mythos. And I think it's like a super interesting show. I've watched all of the anime. I haven't been reading the manga, but it is a really, really cool show. And I'm wondering how you thought about it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It's not like I'd never heard the name, and I'd certainly seen some of the merchandise, especially of who I would learn to be All Might, not really knowing what was going on at all. But I hadn't really watched any of it. I thought it was an interesting take on the genre, especially with that sort of immediate inversion that at a certain point, like, the whole of humanity becomes mostly superpowered. And it's about, what your powers are and if you're strong enough to be a superhero. And also that crime went up because of everyone essentially having different powers now and just sort of being random whether that person was going to be a hero or a villain. Or just like an accountant.
There are accountants in this show. They get into that once they actually go to school. But like for the first 6 episodes, they don't actually go to this school, which is kind of interesting considering the whole show is called My Hero Academia.
Yeah, I only watched the first 2. It seems like a natural stopping point for what it accomplishes. And, I mean, I did kind of get where it was going anyway, that it seemed like he is going to end up into one of those specialty schools for heroes from where it ends. I would say, like, the most interesting thing to me, and it's something that we seem to revisit over and over again, but it's no secret why, that sort of parallel of All Might more to Captain Marvel than to Superman. That, his powers, as you find... you find out almost immediately that he transforms. It's just, as you go through the 2 episodes, you learn that he's also not able to hold it due to injury, and I thought that was actually the most interesting thing in the show from what I saw.
He is basically a kind of like weird Captain America and Superman parallel. They get a bit more into his powers and what happened with him. Since they're so early in the show, a cool thing they do is that they get a lot into the physiology of like superpowers and things like that, and how the superpowers like affect a person's body, and that's especially true with All Might. They do a whole arc about it with All Might, and especially Deku too later on. But I wanted you to watch this because I think it's like a really interesting take on how other countries see like American superheroes. Because here I think in America, we see superheroes as kind of like exceptional, but in My Hero Academia, they kind of have like a very, I guess, like societal structure to it. Like they kind of incorporate all these superpowers into society rather than saying like, oh, they're exceptional, they're an exception to society. And I think that's even the case in like One Punch Man, which I think you said you watched all of on Netflix.
Yeah, I did at least watch what was out at the time. I couldn't say if I watched all of it. I watched enough of it to talk about it. I agree with that. I think that's a very Japanese theme, is heroes being kind of built into the structure of the society, whereas, in the US, and I would argue, largely in Europe too, superheroes or, vigilantes are seen as outsiders to the order. You can make arguments about Superman being sort of part of the state, but whenever that argument is made, it always seems like that's like the extrapolation, and if you go to like standard Superman, it's almost never the case. Here we see definitely this idea of like superheroes becoming part of not just the culture, but how society functions, which might be more realistic. If you were to have the advent of superheroes, but it's also under the assumption that, as we were saying before, the majority of people are at least somewhat superpowered, so it becomes mundane as opposed to say like X-Men, which has like kind of a similar explanation where it's a genetic change, but it's supposed to be like a minuscule part of the population has access to powers.
Like, they go into a whole thing about how you're born with like an extra bone in your toe, and that's how you get a quirk and everything. Like, there's a whole genetic component to it.
Yeah, at the point that I watched it, it was almost like it was just an indicator that you had mutated correctly, and it was an evolutionary thing that you don't require that extra bone in your toe, so it makes sense that it went away, and it's an early indicator that you're going to have powers or not. But those powers could be like unremarkable, which is what they established in the show.
Yeah, I mean, like we kind of pointed out, you're not very far in the show, but they get really like wacky with the powers, which is also, I think, a very like Japanese thing, is to have these really weird powers that I don't think you really see much anymore in at least American superhero media. Like, usually it's just like flying brick powers, but later on you get people that like can explode with their sweat. I think you see him in the first two episodes.
It's interesting that they chose the word quirk to define the powers, and I don't know if that's a direct translation from whatever it was in Japanese, but the way you're talking about the types of powers that they show, and they do show these sort of bizarre powers even in the early episodes. That's like what we always consider like the quirky superheroes, like almost like Grant Morrison Doom Patrol type powers, where the whole point is, if any of this is possible, then anything is possible. Here they're taking it, I don't know if seriously is the word. It's just part of the entire structure from the beginning, so it plays a little differently.
Yeah, I think they take it very seriously. I don't know if you care too much about spoilers going into this. Like, it's not like a plot heavy show. It is a show in an anime, so it's all about the fights. But I don't want to just like start blabbing about shit.
Yeah, I think this is as spoilery as we will get on this one. Partially because I'm probably going to keep watching it, and I don't really want to know what happens.
Okay.
And also, we didn't really say spoilers at the beginning, but hey, spoilers. I'll put it in a text or something when we post this episode. There'll be some minor spoilers for the first 40 minutes of the show. So I think we're just going to pique people's interest. I'm not worried about it. But yeah, it is a very Japanese take on superheroes from, what I know of Japanese shows. There is always that sort of caveat of heroes being there for some kind of societal reason, whether that be Sentai, where sometimes they're literally government agents, or just, chosen ones, where that kind of goes against the American superhero, which are almost always outcasts. Like, you can make arguments that they evolve into these roles, and there's certainly stories that have over the years pushed characters in that way, but for the most part, most superhero origins are, if not random, sort of out of place. Like, even Batman is like this idea of, this really rich guy kind of devoting his entire life to something he definitely doesn't have to. You have all your science experiments. Here, this is most of society. This is how society works, and poor Deku doesn't yet have powers, and that's a problem for being a hero.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point with Batman because, like I said, I saw all 88 episodes up to now, and it's never really like a Batman allegory. Like, they do tons of other heroes. They do like even like JoJo references and things like that, but they never really have like a hero that's ability is just being rich, or like just or villain that's just rich. And I think that's also like how Japanese society kind of like looks at American superheroes too. Like, I don't think they kind of see all these powers as something that is like exceptional. Yeah, I didn't really think about them not having a Batman allegory throughout this whole show. What do you think is going to happen in the show, since you're so early into it?
So where I end, All Might does reveal that there is a way for Deku to be a hero, that's where I ended.
Yeah.
Because, quite frankly, from what I saw, that was the end of that first little arc, was how is he going to even get to this point? And, wow, he met his hero, and then we find out how, utterly flawed the hero is, but in kind of a different way than I guess Western audiences are used to. Our character flaws tend to be obsessions. They tend to be, issues. Here, it's literally that he can't be a superhero well enough because of an injury, which I think is kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, it's like he pushes himself too far, but it's not out of like some odd sense of duty like his parents are dead. It's just because it's the right thing to do for him.
Which is interesting because I almost see it as more that it's the expectation, and the expectation is the driving force through everything. And I don't think the expectation isn't seen as a negative as it well could be.
It's interesting you bring up the word expectation because there's a lot of that later on in the show. Like, there's a lot of weird expectations that pop up, and it becomes a bit of a annoying theme, especially with certain characters that become prominent in the show later on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the way they're setting it up is, like you were saying, and you kind of already said this, that we'll get into full explanation of All Might's powers. I'm going to suspect that he, like Deku, didn't have any powers organically, and that he was somehow given them. His powers being so extreme, I feel like it might be beyond just mutation of some sort. That's just instinct. Because he changes the weather in the second episode, which, I know Storm can do that, and she's supposed to be just a mutant, which has always bothered me. But, like, things like that, where it's like this willpower-based thing, make me believe that he's something else, especially because he's called All Might, which is, I don't know, once again, like, translation-wise, I don't know if he was called All Might, in Japanese, but that basically implies God in English.
No, he's called All Might, and then like all his catchphrases are in English and everything. He's supposed to be a very American hero.
Why do they always give American characters that weird hair?
I don't know. It's always like that blonde spiky hair, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like from Guile, it just got like crazier and crazier. But yeah, that's what I think it's going to be. That there's, we were talking about how this is a lot playing with the idea that there is like an order to society because of this. I think there might be a higher order, and All Might is somehow tapping into that. And then Deku, because he's so pure of heart and proved that he could be a hero even when he had no powers, is going to be given access to that, which is also kind of another Captain Marvel parallel, where you have the right person getting the right powers.
Which Captain Marvel? Because there's a million of them, like we did that to podcast on.
The first Captain Marvel.
But I also wanted to bring up One Punch Man because I think the way I saw like One Punch Man and the way I saw My Hero Academia is that they were kind of like DC and Marvel. Like My Hero Academia tried to build like a very realistic superhero anime, and One Punch Man is just kind of like totally balls to the wall, whatever the fuck happens. And they also use that a lot to like make fun of superheroes, and then it becomes like more and more critical as the show goes on about like the concept of superheroes and how people approach superheroes in society. And I think that's something DC does a lot accidentally, while also praising like other heroes too, such as Mugen Rider in One Punch Man, and that's the only character that like Saitama like respects in that entire show. Is the guy that rides a bike and saves people from disasters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely does sort of mirror the two majors, and I think you called it right that, the One Punch Man thing is kind of more of a DC thing where someone becomes almost deified, and then it's like an exaggeration of the opposite in Marvel where everyone is really flawed. And to the extent here where it's literally almost everyone is under scrutiny for being a hero. Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea, but I think One Punch Man still has this sort of, we were talking about like that Morrison aesthetic where, things are quirky, which is, it's still driving me nuts that that's actually what they call the powers because it makes it hard to talk about. But things are quirky because the idea is this is how extreme you can go. One Punch Man seems to like acknowledge that a little more, where it's almost sort of the Japanese take on that concept, whereas, and like I said, only 2 episodes in, My Hero Academia is quirky, but like not acknowledging it as much. It does get goofy, but it's not supposed to be like, I don't know, almost ironic like One Punch Man is. It's just like, this is the world and this is crazy.
I think this and a lot of other anime kind of avoid what annoys me in modern comics a lot, is that when people point out, oh, this is so weird. Because in their world, it's not weird. Like, yeah, in their world, some people just look like grapes, and that's kind of normal, and you just live with that. And they do kind of nod and say, oh, that character looks kind of weird, but they're never like, oh, how do you live like that? How don't you want to change? For them, it's just like, that's their life.
Right. I don't disagree with that, but I think, the control that American comics have put on that is, that the population isn't too big ever for superheroes. Yeah. Even, we've discussed this before, even if you're saying that, there are a few thousand mutants in a global sense, that's not that many. Like, that would be you could live your entire life and never see a mutant. My Hero Academia flips that on its head where it's like, it's probably harder to see someone without powers at that point than it is to see someone, who can slowly move something across the table.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed at least the first 2 episodes. I hope you stick with it at least until the 12th episodes or so. Or maybe in the 24th. I know that's a lot of commitment, but, I think around the 24th episode it really picks up. But I think one of the strengths of this show is that it's
nothing coming out, right? So it can.
yeah. Like, it's 88 episodes, like I said, so it's kind of like continually ongoing. It's like, it's not like Naruto where there's like 500 fucking episodes. Like, there's a strict limit on what's out right now.
But yeah, I did enjoy it. I definitely do intend to continue, and I'd recommend, for our listeners who enjoy superheroes, that they give it a look. I won't guarantee anything. I think it's an interesting concept, and I do look forward to see where it does go. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's really it on these reactors here. I only watched 2 episodes, so how much more can we talk about?
No, it's hard to make someone watch watch all 24 episodes of a show. It's like, geez, man, I only have so much time.
Yeah, and it's also like how good are my thoughts going to be if I'm just starting and I haven't had a chance to think about it. That was perfect. Thank you for the 2 episodes. But if you'd like to follow us, we're everywhere on social media. Just type in Dissecting Fiction. Honestly, type in Dissecting Fiction into Google and type in whatever you're looking for us on. We'll probably pop up. Rate, share, 5 stars, all the things. I feel stupid telling you what to do because you know what to do.
It's the call to action. We have to.
Oh, the call to action. That's right. Yeah. I wonder if it does increase numbers. I'm going to find some statistics on that. I don't know. If you're looking for some toys, and there are some My Hero Academia toys, I think some statues too, be sure to check out toystoreguide.com. They're going to get you to all different independent retailers across the country who could really use your business these days. Be sure to be supporting your local businesses, comic shops, record stores, restaurants, whatever that may be. But I think that's pretty much it. I'm Vinny Murphy.
I'm Christiaan Kutlick.
And thanks for listening.